Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to take a low scoring response and turn it into a very high scoring response. Here is the prompt with the response. Public transportation and private vehicles are two primary means of commuting in many cities. Discuss the advantages and disadvantages of both. Which do you believe is more beneficial for the environment and why? And here's the response. The two primary means of commuting in many cities are public transportation and private transportation. The public transportation is a transportation which is being held by government, and private transportation is a transportation that is conducted by the man owner. The advantages of public transportations is they helps to join to the job with lesser amount of money. Moreover, private transportations is more faster to arrive in our places. Let's understand why this response does not score well. Here are the scoring criteria that are used by Duolingo to evaluate writing questions. The first two are best understood together. So you really can't understand content and discourse coherence separately. You need to think about them as one thing. And there's some concepts there that I explain in another video. But basically, what these first two scoring criteria are looking for is one, how well your response is structured. Two, the clarity of your ideas. And three, the organization of your ideas. So this response does not do well on these two scoring criteria. The main thing is that it's very short, which means there's simply not enough room for this writer to develop their ideas, to share relevant information, and to construct a full convincing argument, which means that this response is not going to do well on the content and discourse coherence scoring criteria. So I would say this response would score around a 70. For these two. Next is lexis or vocabulary. And what Duolingo is looking for is one, are you using a diversity of words? So are you using different words and not repeating the same words? Lexical sophistication, are you using advanced vocabulary? Choice of words, are you using the right words in the right ways? Formation of words, so are you using the noun form versus the adjective form, for example? And spelling, are you simply not making spelling mistakes? So this response does have some advanced vocabulary. Public transportation, private transportation. However, that vocabulary was taken from the prompt itself. The writer didn't have to think of these advanced words. Also, because the response is short and they don't have a lot of ideas in the response, that means it's simply impossible to have diverse vocabulary. It also makes it more difficult to have more advanced vocabulary. And there were also some mistakes related to the formation of words, using the wrong form of words, as well as spelling mistakes. So unfortunately for this lexis or vocabulary scoring criteria, this response would also score about a 70, not very high. Finally, you have grammar, which is grammatical complexity. So are you using advanced grammatical sentences and structures? Grammatical accuracy, are you not making grammatical mistakes? And punctuation, are you using commas and periods correctly? The grammar in this response is not so bad. There are certainly grammar mistakes, but it could be a lot worse. So I would say that this response would score about a 90 for grammar. So overall, this response would score something like a 75 or an 80 on the actual test. Let's now look at how we can take this low scoring response and improve it and expand upon it so that it gets a very high score. The first sentence is, the two primary means of commuting in many cities are public transportation and private transportation. This is not a good first sentence. Why? Because it doesn't add anything to the response. It's simply copying basically the first sentence of the response. So this isn't going to gain the test taker any points, and it also takes valuable time away from writing things that will gain them points. So we need to have a better beginning. The next sentence, the public transportation is a transportation which is being held by government, and private transportation is a transportation that is conducted by the man owner. This is somewhat relevant, defining the terms public transportation and private transportation. However, this sentence also is not going to get this test taker very many points because they're not being asked to explain the differences between public transportation and private vehicles or private transportation or define those terms. They're being asked specifically to talk about the advantages and disadvantages, as well as which one is better for the environment. This second sentence, doesn't do any of those things. So while it is relevant to the topic being asked about, it's not really relevant to the prompt. So we need to eliminate that sentence as well. So far, I can tell you for sure that we are going to eliminate the first two sentences, which is already more than half of the response. The advantages of public transportations is they helps to join to the job with lesser amount of money. So finally, this test taker finally starts to answer the prompt directly and explain the advantages of these two modes of transportation. So this is good. And they also talk about the advantages of private transportation, of private vehicles, which is that they're faster. So we finally have two ideas that we can use in our response. So let's start writing this higher scoring response. For prompts in which you are asked for your opinion, the best strategy is to begin by stating your opinion clearly. So in this case, we are asked, which do you believe is more beneficial for the environment? Which means it's best to begin my response with something like, I believe that public transportation is more beneficial for the environment. And now I need to provide my reason, my justification for this belief. The main reason I believe this is that public transportation is more efficient. More people can move from one place to another with less fuel being used. As a result, the carbon emissions that are generated on a per person basis by public transportation are lower than they are for private vehicles. So already my response is better structured and it's going to score higher for those first two criteria, which are content and discourse coherence. You can also see that I'm using more advanced vocabulary here. Efficient, carbon emissions, per person basis. So not only are my ideas better organized, they're more sophisticated, but my vocabulary is more sophisticated. For my second paragraph, I'm going to use the idea from the low scoring response, which was that public transportations help people get to their work with less amount of money. A more natural way to phrase this would be that public transportation is simply cheaper. So, I can say, in addition, another advantage of public transportation is that it is cheaper. This allows more people to travel around a city, as well as for people to take more trips. This increased mobility for residents of a city can change profoundly their experience of living there. So you can see I simply took the idea from the low scoring response and I expanded upon it. I elaborated why public transportation being cheaper is beneficial for people who live in a city. This allowed me to use advanced vocabulary, to increase the length of my response, to make a more persuasive argument. All of these things are also going to help me gain more points. For my third paragraph, I'm now going to talk about the advantages of private vehicles. So I'm going to change my argument a little bit, which means I should use a connecting word like however. However, there are advantages to private vehicles. In my opinion, the primary advantage is that they enable us to travel from one place to another more quickly. This was the idea in the low scoring response. I'm just using it here, and again, I'm going to expand upon it. Because we have to wait for public transportation modes like trains and buses to arrive, typically it takes longer to travel with them when compared to traveling with private vehicles. Anytime we want, we can hop in our car and drive wherever we want to go. Finally, it's always best if you have the time to put a concluding sentence. You can begin your concluding sentence with "in conclusion." While there are advantages and disadvantages to both public transportation and private vehicles, in my view, public transportation is on balance a better mode of transportation for cities and towns. And that's it. That is our high scoring response. So I know that there's a lot of advanced vocabulary there, but I want you to recognize the things that are easy to replicate, the things that you can do in your own responses very easily. The main thing is the structure. So, like I said, when you are asked for your opinion, begin your response by stating your opinion clearly. All right, so that's the first thing. Next is you need to have supporting ideas with an explanation of why you believe that within each paragraph. So that's all I did in my paragraphs. I said, this is what I believe, and then I justified or explained why I believe that. So here I said public transportation is more beneficial for the environment, and then I explained why. Then I said that public transportation is cheaper, and I explained why that's an advantage, what benefit it brings to people. And finally, I said that there are, however, advantages to private vehicles. And then I explained what the primary advantage of private vehicles is and how, again, it benefits people. And finally, because I had the time, I wrote a nice concluding sentence to reiterate my opinion so that it was made crystal clear to the grader. If you found this video helpful, please be sure to like and subscribe. That way other students like you who are preparing for the DET around the world can find this video. If you want to get feedback like this on your own writing, then here's what I want you to do. I'm going to put a writing sample prompt here. I'll also put it down in the description of this video. I want you to comment on this video with your response to this prompt. And next week, I'm going to make another video like this one in which I take one or maybe a few responses and go through it thoroughly and turn it into a high-scoring answer. So if you want a chance for your writing to be reviewed like this so that you can learn how to make it even better, just put that comment with your response. Okay, I'll see you next week. Take care. Bye.